Hi, I'm Max Poston, and I'd like to present my magazine, Indie Insider, the monthly indie rock music magazine based on indie rock artists in North London. The name. The name was decided as both words are make an alliteration, as well as this. The word indie connotes to the reader that the magazine is indeed about indie rock, whilst the word insider suggests to the onlooker of the magazine that they're receiving inside information in the genre that they wouldn't be able to get anywhere else from any other magazine. The font decided. For the magazine, for the title, it's called Indie Underwear. Kevlar Underwear, which is the title of the font, which I got from the font. The text, as you can see, has serifs, giving it a retro feel. This is effective as the genre's most prominent in the 1990s and 2000s. However, serifs aren't incredibly noticeable. This is useful as the magazine will mainly be based on artists and venues today. The purpose of the magazine. The purpose of the magazine is to get indie rock in North London back to a status that it used to have 20 years ago as one of the most prominent genres. Unfortunately, it isn't anymore. As well as this, we would very much like to expand the magazine, hopefully to a global market, as to gain more finance and to improve the content of the magazine. The form of the magazine, the electronic form of the magazine will be available on the App Store, Google Play Store, and Kindle Store, whilst physical issues of the magazine will be available in shops such as convenience stores and supermarkets. Hopefully, we would be able to sign a deal with supermarkets and convenience stores to sell it there. This would happen. This wouldn't be able to happen, or we wouldn't suggest that this would happen very early on, as they would most likely want to sell the magazine once it has a noticeable amount of readers. As well as this, there would be, I would assume that there wouldn't be a large starting capital for printing, so it would be wise just to start with a digital issue and eventually bring in a physical issue after we gain enough readers. Sorry, I don't know what happened. Sorry.
It's your laptop. Your laptop's gone off.
Laptop should be on.
Wait.
Wait.
Oh no.
Yes, sorry. Sorry about this.
No, please don't apologise. It's absolutely fine.
Okay. The content of magazine's content would be mainly Q&As with featured artists of the magazine, as well as upcoming indie rock live shows in North London.
It's okay, don't worry.
Yeah, it's okay. This formula is taken from magazines such as Wire and Pitchfork. However, the main difference between our magazine and theirs would be that they would be focusing on the past, whilst we'd be focusing on the future. By having our main focus on upcoming musicians rather than them who already have the funding and the availability to focus on well-established musicians. As well as this, we would be focusing on musicians and shows exclusively in North London to begin with. The target audience of the magazine would be males who live in North London who are aged 25 to 35. They would most likely be in the social grades of C1 to A. They would enjoy indie rock. The ages were decided as they would be teenagers during the 1990s and 2000s, as adolescents are the most prominent group of people who listen to music. I would assume that this group of people would enjoy indie rock then, and hopefully they would enjoy it now. The resources, we would need an Apple Mac computer to run software such as Photoshop, which we need as well, a DSLR camera in order to take photos of people for the cover and double-page spreads of my magazine, tripods in order to keep a tripod to keep the images still, a lens in order to give the photographer availability and how far he wants to take photographs, a memory card in order to store photographs and put them on Apple computer. A video camera. This would be used for filming interviews with artists, so that there would be so the interviewer and the writer of these interviews wouldn't have anything wrong and nothing would be made up or anything, just so they wouldn't have to rely on notes. And a spare camera battery so that the cameraman would have twice the amount of time for shooting pictures. Personnel. We would need a cameraman, a Photoshop editor, an interviewer, indie album reviewer, and an editor. The cameraman would obviously be used for taking photographs. Photoshop editor would be for editing the photos for the magazine. The interviewer for interviewing the musicians. Indie album reviewer, that would be for reviewing albums for the magazine and telling listeners what has recently come out and what's good. And the editor to make sure that nothing is plagiarized or that anything is wrong with the magazine that could be deemed offensive by readers. Yes, any questions? Sorry, no? Sorry, this is happening again. Sorry.
That's okay, please.
Sorry.
It's just a technical glitch.
Yeah, okay. Distribution and marketing methods. In order to use the budget efficiently, we would have to target our audience, our marketing to the target audience, which would be males aged 25 to 35 who enjoy indie rock. Advertising the physical issue. Sorry. Advertising the physical issue would take place at live indie rock concerts. Would take live. Whilst the digital issue would take place. We would advertise on a web. Oh, I'm sorry about this. I'm really sorry about this. Okay.
Don't worry, it's fine.
Yeah.
Just take time.
Yeah.
It's
Sorry.
perfectly okay.
Whilst the digital issue, which I already mentioned, would be distributed on the App Store, Google Play Store, and Kindle Store, would be advertised on Facebook. This was decided because the majority of the target audience would be on Facebook, as well as this. Facebook has an algorithm to decide to advertise my magazine specifically to people who have shown interest in the genre of indie rock. They would know this by seeing albums that they publicly enjoy that are indie rock or joining groups that discuss indie rock. The reason why I am not advertising on social media such as Instagram or Snapchat is because they're mainly aimed at a younger demographic. Than my main target audience. These are some potential drafts for the cover and double page spread of my magazine. These were the drawn drafts. Here you can take a look up close.
Thank you.
And I have digitalized them and improved them here.
Oh, lovely.
Any questions?
Is that the... That's the end of your pitch, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Wow. Wow, okay, that was a fast and furious pitch, wasn't it? Fantastic. I like the creative presentation style, it was fun.
Yeah, thank you.
I thought that was really neat. So, yeah, good work on that. I like your rationale for the name up front. So the first thing that we talked about there was why you called it Indie Insider. I thought that was nice. I like the alliterative nature of the name. I think it kind of works. And it's an interesting proposition. So that's kind of cool. You went into a bit more detail about the font that you've used, or the typeface it is actually, that you've used, which was called Kevlar Underwear, which is possibly the best name for a typeface I've heard in an awful long time. I shall be looking it out myself, just so I can amuse myself. But you did talk about serifs.
Yes.
As being
serifs are
old-fashioned?
serifs are usually, linked with old typefaces for, I don't know, books or film posters, as you can see around this room. The majority of newer designs have more simplistic fonts, but as the font does have serifs, I believe it complements how it. But it complements how it was prominent 10 to 20 years ago. But as it's not completely noticeable, it also focuses on how it's more of a modern magazine.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I understand exactly what you're getting at. I'm not entirely sure I agree with it, but I understand the rationale, which is good, and I think it's really nice to sort of that you've thought these things through, and there's a proper reason for choosing something. I worry about what that is, because I mean, do you understand why typefaces have serifs?
Yes, so that's easier for the reader to read across.
Exactly, it's
like
scanning.
handwriting.
It's for scanning, isn't it? So that you can read it. So body copy in books is generally serif fonts for exactly that reason, because sans serif fonts are harder to read in big blocks of copy.
Okay.
So when you're talking about the title, I kind of understand what you're talking about, but I'm not sure it's actually a thing. You know, it's not something you should worry about. I think, you know, if you're going to talk about the weight and the precision of that particular typeface you're using, that's maybe where you should be focusing sort of your rationale and your sort of the reason for that. I mean, to that end, I'm not entirely sure that I'm convinced that it's the right typeface, much as I've really enjoyed the title. I think it's great. But again, that's your choice. If you have a good rationale for it, absolutely perfect. You talked, so the brief, unless I'm entirely wrong, the brief was for a North London music magazine, is that right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right, okay. So, but very, very quickly, you took that and expanded it globally.
Yes.
How would you take a North London-centric magazine to a global level? What would be, how would you do that?
Well, of course, it would be gradual. It would be North London, but
Yep.
From that it would cover all of London. From that, United Kingdom.
Right, so it stopped being a North London magazine.
Yes.
Right, okay.
Well,
So does that answer the brief?
Early on, it would be North London magazine, but I understand that there would be a wider audience globally, more people,
Yeah.
of course, and I understand, especially early on, if there would be an expansion of
Okay.
London, I can understand why people in other parts of London may find it may not like the magazine, as it's focused on North London, focusing on venues and artists from North London.
Yeah.
Obviously, venues that they may not be able to get to.
The reason I ask is because if you're given a brief and you say, yeah, I've answered the brief, but, and then you immediately go beyond the brief, or you take it outside the brief and you're no longer answering that, you're no longer doing what you've been told, the client is liable to go, hang on a second, we don't want a global magazine, we want a North London magazine. Why have you done that? And that's what will happen. Do you see what I mean?
Yes.
So I think your thinking is brilliant. I think the idea that you can say, okay, I've got ambition for this, and I can see this, maybe we can pump it out. But globally, what I'd suggest you do wouldn't be going, okay, well, we can go to South London, and then we can go to the UK, and then we can go, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And what I think you could probably do is go, this is the model we're going to go with. Then we could move it to the US, and we could say we're going to do a New York edition, and then we're going to do a San Francisco edition, then we're going to do a Johannesburg edition, and then we're going to do a Melbourne edition. Yeah, see, and then you can make it a city-centric thing. But I think initially and up front, it's probably not the best thing to do is to go in with your pitch and go, like your idea, let's move it to one side and go with my idea. That's probably going to maybe annoy the client, I don't know. Okay, so just something to think about. Yeah, okay, so, brilliant to have ambition, but if you're going to have the ambition, try and be clever with it and don't put it up front.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe at the end. Say, okay, now I've told you all about it, this is how I think maybe we could grow it and get excited about it, yeah? So, brilliant, but be careful with where you put that information. Yeah, make those decisions. So that's cool. Was there a printed, I mean, obviously this is printed, but I don't,
Yes.
you talked about a lot about the digital side of things.
Yes. That's because I understand that as the magazine goes, more people will be wary of wasting paper.
Yep.
obviously biodegradable paper for the magazine is possible, but on a as time goes on, a lot more houses are becoming paperless.
Yeah.
So I decided to initially start my magazine digitally, keep it like that, and to focus more advertising digitally, spend more of the budget for that instead of advertising for the physical issue.
Okay, so again, the brief I think specifies they want a paper printed edition and a digital one. Yeah.
Yes.
So you've got to be sure that you cover off both of those, and you have a really good rationale up front that says this is the decision I've made. I know what you want, and I'm going to provide what you want, but I'm also thinking in this way as to how we kind of move things on in the future. It's a bit like the last point we made about the global thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so that's cool. If we can go back to the slide that talks about your app and the digital proposition, can we just?
Yeah, sure.
We can get back to that.
Or that was inform, I suppose.
There we go. That's
Here.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we can have a look at that. Kindle.
Yes.
Is that how you want to present the magazine? As a Kindle?
It will be
Publication.
available on the Kindle store. It's as magazines are often. This is because a large amount of the target audience can have this, as well as this. The Kindle store, you can download books and magazines. They have it on all devices because I know some people have only Android or Apple.
Yeah, sure.
So this would allow them to have it on their computer as well as their mobile phone.
I mean, you're the only person who's mentioned that you can actually look at this stuff on Kindle, and I think that's really good. That's good research, because you can download your magazines onto your Kindle and read them. So I think that's really interesting that you've pointed that up, because you're the first person that I've noticed that has done that. So that's kind of an interesting point. I'd also quite like to know numbers. How many people do actually read on their Kindle a magazine? I mean, I've tried, just gave up.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean to say it's the wrong thing to do, because Kindle Fire, or you can have the Kindle app on your iPad or whatever. So it's all there, and I think that's really strong. Be nice to see it on a kind of a mobile device rather than just a paperweight or whatever. It's older than the paperweight, blimey.
Yeah,
It's just a Kindle, isn't it? Wow. So I think when you're choosing those images, choose carefully.
Okay.
Make sure you're showing what you want to show. So rather than being regressive, which that image arguably is, because it's an old Kindle, they don't make them anymore, and it's probably not where you want people to read this sort of content, because they want colour and they want it to feel like it's got a lot going on, and it's easier to interact with when it's on an iPad or a phone or something like that. So maybe that's how you promote it. Yeah, but I think it's a really good idea that you've identified that as a market. I think that's really interesting. You mentioned Pitchfork. I know this is sort of pulling out just one little thing.
Yeah. Sure.
The next one is.
Not this again. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go, isn't it?
Yes, here.
Handily. Bing, bing, bing,
Okay.
bing, bing, bing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Pitchfork and Wire were the two competitors. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I'd want to operate on a global scale is because obviously they do as well.
Okay, yeah. And it's interesting that I think you were talking about printed offerings. Is Pitchfork not online?
It is
It is an online thing, isn't it? Yeah, that's
I
what
believe
thought.
it's exclusively online.
Yeah. Whereas Wire, clearly much more of a printed production. When you were presenting it, that wasn't clear, and it was almost like I was thinking, oh, have I missed a trick here? I thought Pitchfork was just online. Do they do a printed version? So that clarity, I think, needs to come through. It's good that you've identified those as competitors, but I think you just need to be a bit clearer when you're actually presenting. And also, I think you mentioned that they deal with old music rather than contemporary, which isn't.
Mainly their interviews are with well-established musicians.
Right.
That's what I meant.
That's different. Yeah,
Not by people who aren't big yet.
Yeah, sure. I see what you mean. Yeah, right. Okay, so fair enough. But when you presented it, and I definitely heard that, it was like, okay, well, I thought they did contemporary stuff as well, so maybe I'm getting this wrong. But just be clear, so that when old people like me kind of come to it, we can understand what's going on. Yeah. Boom, 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 boom. There was another thing that, again, this is odd because I think your proposition's really good. I think the idea's strong. There's a lot of kind of scope for indie music. It's quite a wide thing. It's been around for a long time, so there's a lot of history there. So you can pick up a lot when it comes to the demographic. So I don't know where I didn't write down what your age groups were.
Oh, my age, my primary.
It was 25 to 35.
It was like 25 to 35. Yes.
Again, can we have a look at that slide, please?
Sure, of course. Here.
Okay, so go through all the whole thing.
Okay.
There you go. Right to the end, and then you sort of talked about these are the London people of this sort that would read that magazine.
Sure.
Okay, so the guy's got a croquet stick and a cigar, or croquet mallet and a cigar.
Oh, this is this is to show social grade C1 to A.
But I thought it would be great if it were more actually representative of the sort of people that might read it, because out of all those guys, I'm not sure any of them listen to indie rock.
Okay.
I'm fairly sure they don't, but that's just my perception. And whilst I really love your presentation style, I've really done this click-through thing. I think that's brilliant fun, and it's kind of lively, and it really engages me. I think when the images come up and you're talking about them, I'm sort of thinking, oh no, I wish that was a guy who kind of looked like he was into indie. That looks like a guy who's into the, Fortune 500. It's just, not quite the same audience. Yeah.
Understood. Yes.
Cool. Okay. The other thing, again, is more presentation stuff. The equipment.
Yes. Sure. Here.
Yeah, all valid. Absolutely all valid. We don't need to know why a cameraman might need a lens.
Okay. Fine.
Yeah. Because if you haven't got a lens on your camera, you can't take photographs.
Yeah.
And everyone knows that, and that's kind of fair. So you might need to, at that point, just kind of go, this is the equipment. Some of the equipment we might need, it's not all of the equipment by any stretch of the imagination. There's a whole ton of stuff behind there that you might need. The big one, and I've told this to other members of your class, the Photoshop only layout software is really important. You need to have some access to layout software, otherwise you ain't going to make a magazine. You can't make a magazine with Photoshop, it doesn't work, because it's not for that. Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, so, a little more research, be careful with what you say.
Okay.
Yeah, and how you say it, and sort of also just understand that you don't have to describe everything in detail, because, people come with baggage. We all understand what a camera's for, what a memory card's for, what a video camera's for, and what a computer's for. It's all there. Okay, so you can speed things up in that respect, give yourself a little bit of a break, by not worrying too much about it. Okay?
Okay.
Brilliant. I think they were kind of all the notes that I took. I'd like to see, some more kind of concentration perhaps on the typefaces that you use apart from the one for the title.
Yes.
Because then you'd be able to extend your palette and you'd be able to sort of explain the brand a bit more. Okay, because that would be part of it. The colour palette, maybe a mood board to add a bit of texture to the whole thing, so that you can understand maybe a bit more about the design and the brand. Okay, so feed that back to us. That would be good to see, I think. But it's really great that you've done these, the sketches. I like your feathers. So me, was that look like Mr. Ben?
It does look like Mr. Ben, yeah.
Okay. Sorry, have you got any questions?
No, I mean, not specifically. I mean, my only real concern with it, you talked at the start about, you say indie rock's a little bit in decline at the moment.
Yes.
So my only real concern would be that the brief calls for, you to chart a vibrant music scene, and when you talk about indie being in decline, talking about a gap in the market, I wonder why there's a gap in the market, and I also maybe wonder if 25 to 35, does that represent a vibrant music scene?
I believe so, but also I didn't get a second to mention, but I also have a secondary target audience, which is 15 to 25 year olds. obviously, the main reason why I decided to have 25 to 35-year-olds as my primary target audience is because they would have listened to they would have listened to indie rock when it was most prominent in the 90s and 2000s. Obviously, people aged 15 to 25 would be more likely to be in the vibrant music scene.
So I wonder if it's almost worth switching them, saying, well, my primary audience is going to be 15 to 25, and then the secondary audience is going to be 25 to 35. I wonder if that might be an avenue to go down.
I understand where you're coming from, but I don't know. The main reason why I could understand why 15 to 25-year-olds would enjoy the genre would be because they're at that age, people tend to start expanding their music tastes from very niche things, not to very niche things, from very, very mainstream stuff.
Okay.
Interesting.
All right. Thank you, Max.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you.